guys? This is the 3D Dynasty podcast on the SGPN Fantasy Football Podcast on the Sports Scaling Podcast Network. It's brought to you by Birddog Shorts. Dominate summer with an amazing pair of shorts and a free Yeti style tumbler when you order over at birddogs.com/pool. That's birddogs.com/pool. All right, I'm going to bring in my co-host, Mr. Brad Stickler, FF Bourbon Dude, and our guest. Please make sure you give Eric a follow. This is Eric Moody from ESPN Fantasy. Eric, how was your Monday?
No, everything is good. Still recovering from Father's Day. You know, lots of family time, lots of good eating, and it was a good day today. You know, did ESPN bet earlier, talking some NFL. You know, had some NBA news from Father's Day with Bradley Beal. You know, joining the Suns.
Huge.
Not official, but is official. You know, not signed just yet, or that trade. But no, it's all good. And I know we're in the, I would say the calm before the fantasy football storm. And so it's good times right now. Good times.
Yeah, and we're Dynasty, so we don't take any days off here. And you do all different sports. So I really do appreciate you coming on. One of the nicest guys in the space. Make sure you give Eric a follow. And everybody, please, housekeeping, like, subscribe. Please make sure to hit that subscriber button. And so, Eric, I think you were reading my mind because I sent Brad a list over, and I want to play a little stash or trash with you because you're the guest. And so in your super flex leagues, just stash or trash, Jared Stidham.
I would you said stash or trash? I would trash.
Clayton Tune.
I would trash.
DTR from the Browns.
Is it that I'm saying trash?
hey, we're going deep here. We're going deep, but some of these rosters they don't need clogged. Jake Hayner.
I'm gonna go trash again.
Yeah, I mean, if you could get a poor
tough.
man's version, he's a poor man's version of Brock Purdy, and I don't know if that's saying much, but we'll talk about Brock Purdy later. Let's go on to the running back position. Keontae Ingram.
Yeah, I would still stash.
Joshua Kelly.
Stash.
Isaiah Spiller.
Oh, definitely stash.
Malik Davis. Oh, wait. We're going to talk about Malik Davis later.
Right.
Ty Chandler.
That's what I was thinking. We're probably going to talk about him. I was thinking the same thing. I would trash.
Alec Pierce.
God, I'm a huge fan of his game. My gut says stash.
KJ Osborne.
I don't know. Jordan Addison, though. It's that's even though they're a pass heavy team, I would say trash at this point.
All right, I'm gonna go to the tight end position. Jake Ferguson.
I would end up trashing.
Tucker Kraft.
Trash.
Cade Otton.
Trash.
And the last one, I thought this was pretty surprising draft capital. Brenton Strange.
Yeah, I would still say trash. It's just tight end is so difficult to get to fantasy relevancy. And then, if you have someone that's a upper echelon pick, where they've got a clear path to playing time, it's a lot easier. But still, that's even no guarantee that they'll get the targets and everything. So I'm very picky about tight end in Dynasty.
No, hey, I appreciate you playing. And the last fun question, if you were in a Nintendo-themed fantasy football league, what NES or what Nintendo system would you, Nintendo game would you name your team after?
Yeah, I was thinking just to go old school and think Mario Brothers, all those different games that they've had, and so I guess my team name would be the Warp Pipe Dream Team.
I love it. We did a lot of Mario Brothers in my house. We played Mario Brothers. My son dressed like Mario and drove around the neighborhood, and we watched Mario Brothers movies. So let's get on to the quarterbacks. We got some quarterbacks, and we're always going to talk super flex value when we're talking quarterbacks. And so, Eric, you got the 2-pack here. We got Jaron Hall and we got Sam Howell. Whichever one you want to go first.
Yeah, I'll talk about Howell. I'm really excited. about him in 2023. Like, I know he only started the one game for the Commanders during his rookie season, got that win over the Cowboys, but despite limited playing time, I would say his performance in that game really gave the Commanders coaching staff like confidence in him. So I know he's going into this season where he'll end up being the starter, and I'm like, he's got great skills and ability, and hopefully we'll be able to see him fulfill that potential. But when you look at the offseason, obviously Carson Wentz is no longer on that team, disappointing veteran, in his last two stops, did not play well with the Colts, did not play well with the Commanders. And also they let Tyler Heineke, walk in free agency. So they did bring in Jacoby Brissett, but I look at that more as like a insurance policy. This team they're locked in on Howell. But also what I like about Howell is with his running ability, and that's something that dynasty managers should be excited about. Like in his lone start last season, he rushed for like 35 yards, had a touchdown. And then back in college during his final season, this is a guy who it was over 800 yards and scored 11 touchdowns as a runner. So he's got that dual threat ability where some dynasty managers may not see that. And so I would say to bring all that together on Howell, and I'd love to move on to Jaren Hall, is that this is a player who's going to be the starting quarterback. He's going to have to face plant significantly to get supplanted by Jacoby Brissett. And I think he's someone that in dynasty formats, that even in Superflex, that some managers may be overlooking. So consider to pick him up. But when you look at Jaren Hall, which I was really fascinated with him, is that we all know how productive Kirk Cousins has been in the Vikings offense. They're very pass heavy. But one thing about Cousins, I think about his future, beyond 2023 being really, really uncertain. So that kind of creates an opportunity for Jaren Hall. So, if Cousins moves on, after this year, I think Hall has a legitimate chance to take over as the Vikings starting quarterback. So he's someone else for where if you're going to start up, you can end up sashing him late or even trading for him, now. And he's really in a great situation to succeed. With Justin Jefferson, we talked about Jordan Addison briefly. But this is a guy in college that has some impressive stats. In 2021 and 2022 combined, he threw for 51 touchdowns to just 11 interceptions. And so what those numbers indicate to me is hey, this is a guy that can make big plays, but also protect the football as well. And there's just a lot of buzz, surrounding him. So if you do pick him up, obviously keep your, your head to the ground, ears open about Cousins and the situation with Minnesota. But he's someone that if Cousins does move on, is in a really good situation, great playmaker surrounding him, and also a pass-heavy offensive scheme. So, those are two guys that I kind of have on my radar.
Yeah, I think both are super interesting. And Howell, I've done some dynasty price checks on him, and it's interesting, the market, because it's all over the place. Some people are just not believers. They think Jacoby Brissett's going to be the guy, and that's kind of baked into his cost. And like you said, he does just have it's very kind of Will Levis like career arc in college, where he had a huge junior year, possible number 1 overall pick, and then all of a sudden had a really bad year due to a lot of changes and whatnot. And then he fell pretty hard in the draft, but he did look good and did not, Washington. I thought Washington was going to be a good spot for Hendon Hooker. They didn't bring him in.
Yeah.
So, I like both those picks, and the Cousins contract situation. He commented, he said, he doesn't really know what's going to happen with it. So,
yeah, Sam Howell was, I would almost say, in a worse position than what we saw Will Levis. Will Levis still got second-round draft capital. Yeah. We were talking about Sam Howell as one of the top quarterbacks in that class a few years ago, and he fell to the 5th or 6th round. It was a significant fall from grace, losing De'Ami Brown and some of the other playmakers on offense. If you look at Javonte Williams or Michael Carter, the offensive line changes just a little bit of everything. Will Levis still got high-end second-round draft capital, and poor Sam found himself in day 3, unfortunately. So,
yeah.
Well, Brad, we have definitely want to talk to everyone about Birddogs. We got a great deal for you. Birddogs makes you look good. I hope you got something for Dad. Birddogs stretch khaki shorts are designated to fit slimmer through the thigh and leg, giving you a truly sculpted look. Birddog shorts do the exact same thing as Lululemon, but fit way better. They fit way better than regular shorts that are made to be stiff, and these are restricted cotton, not fun to wear. And so Birddogs fix that issue with cloud knit fabric that looks just like khaki, but stretches so you can get a slimmer look without sacrificing movement. Birddogs use anti-stink, which is everyone on the golf course will definitely thank Brad for that. And it keeps you cool and dry all day long. Some things that you can notice, you can see these on athletes. You're going to see these, a lot of people in the summer. Brad's actually wearing them right now, just got off the course. And so personally, I thought, just really, really felt comfortable wearing them. And luckily, my wife got me some this Father's Day. Go to birddogs.com/pool and enter promo code POOL for your free Yeti-style tumbler with your order. That's birddogs.com/pool. Get a free Yeti-style tumbler. You won't want to take your Bird Dogs off. We promise you. Brad, let's talk about Mr. Two Gloves there, Kenny Pickett.
Hey, he's not the only one that wears two gloves, all right? So let's not knock him too much. I know he has small hands and maybe he needs them, but look, there's nowhere to go but up from 7 touchdowns and 9 interceptions. And when you're coming off the board in Dynasty Startup Leagues as the QB 22, again, there's really, quite frankly, nowhere to go but up. And you're talking about a starting quarterback who has some pretty solid talent around him when you think about the route running savant of Deontay Johnson. You talk about that field stretcher and big time playmaker in George Pickens and some of those beautiful catches like that we like to see on film. And then they bring in Allen Robinson, a guy who a little bit older, but can really solidify that slot position for them. And now he's got a plethora of pass catchers to play with. Pat Freiermuth, we haven't talked about. Darnell Washington, a draft pick that we haven't talked about. And the pass catching, prowess of Najee Harris coming out of the backfield. I just really think with the additions to the offense as well as the offensive line, we look at just really sleeper being somebody who's going to deliver ahead of their ADP. And I think there's a world where he's that top 18-ish type of quarterback, top 15 in an ideal world. If Matt Canada can actually get that offense moving a little bit, which has been our biggest criticism of the Pittsburgh Steelers up to this point, is just maybe a little bit lackluster play calling of the Pittsburgh Steelers. So I think with 7 touchdowns, 9 interceptions, and the playmakers around him, I just think he's a huge benefit and a guy that we're going to see provide above his ADP in Dynasty leagues.
Eric, last time you were on the show, we talked about Najee Harris. Since then, they've made a lot of additions to the offensive line and other moves. What are your thoughts about Kenny Pickett?
No, I do like Kenny Pickett, as a breakout candidate, whether you're playing Dynasty or redraft. And, Brad brought up some really good points, bringing Allen Robinson in. You got George Pickens, you got Deontay Johnson. So he's well positioned for success. And so with Najee, having him a lot healthier this year is obviously going to help, behind that offensive line. And so, no, I'm buying it. I'm buying Kenny Pickett and Najee Harris, whether it's in Dynasty or redraft.
Love it. And I got Brock Purdy on here. And so I thought about Desmond Ridder. I will say a little nod to Desmond Ridder. But I put Purdy on here because there's so many people, especially in Dynasty, that are just so dug in on Trey Lance. Yeah. And for me, and I could be wrong, but I just read the tea leaves and stuff like from the interviews. Fred Warner just talking about this guy at the end of the season after the games. Like, these are captains. This guy won the locker room. And for me, that's a big deal. And the way that they talk about Brock Purdy, the management talks about Brock Purdy, I'm going to let people go and take their chance on Trey Lance. If I miss, I miss. But this guy is literally just plug and play, perfect QB2. He's not going to really give you a lot of upside. Doesn't really rush the ball. Had pretty much 202 every single week. And so especially in your 6-point passing touchdown leagues, this guy's just a set it and forget it QB2, and you can get him right now as a QB 25, 26, and he's young and he's super cheap. And as far as from a team building standpoint, if the 49ers were to move ahead with him, let's say Sam Darnold starts week 1 and 2, Purdy comes in, after the first couple weeks of the season, this guy is making nothing. And they can build around him and pay all those other players that they have to pay because they have a very good roster and a very expensive roster. So, Eric, what are your thoughts on Brock Purdy?
No, I do like Brock Purdy because I think one thing, and you kind of hit on this, Dave, that really makes Purdy an intriguing value right now is because you've got a lot of Trey Lance truthers out there that are still holding out hope. I hate to break it to you, but hope is not a viable and winning strategy in fantasy football. And so, like you mentioned, the tea leaves were out there, and so take advantage of that window to pick up Purdy. And so you just never know. This could be a success story that we're talking about, 3 or 4 years from now. About wow, this guy came in, led this team, and they're built to win a Super Bowl. Things would have turned out much differently, I think, if he wouldn't have gotten injured in that game. That really just took the air out of the balloon and really changed the trajectory of that game. So no, I'm with you on Purdy.
Yeah, and I know it's not a fantasy football move, but taking Javon Hargrave off of the Eagles and adding them to their team, like someone said that in Dynasty, anytime someone makes a trade that your team, like their team got better and their chances of winning got better, and yours got worse. But if you can take someone away from the best team in the conference and put them onto your team, that's a plus move for me. And definitely something that I think you should look at in Dynasty when you're looking at your trades and things like that. If you're keeping someone away from your other contenders, it's okay to trade up, pay up a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, before we go to the running backs.
Hey, look, it's that time of the year. We all been talking about dynasty drafts, but the thing right now are those best ball drafts. And my favorite place to go is going to be Underdog Fantasy. And they've got Best Ball Mania number 4, which is here right now, where they're giving away $15 million in prizes. That's right. $15 million, I said. So Underdog Pick'em is also another way that you can get down with your favorite MLB and college basketball player props. So many ways to win over at Underdog, and it's active in a ton of states. So head over to UnderdogFantasy.com and use our promo code SGPN for a 100% deposit bonus of up to $100. Again, that's UnderdogFantasy.com, promo code SGPN.
Yeah, I'm doing some Underdog after the show. So let's talk about the running backs. And so one thing I love about the list that we put together, I know sleeper is a relative term, and I've seen a lot of shows and I'm like, that's not a sleeper. And I know that like I'm pretty like I follow it a lot, so I know what a sleeper to me is. To someone else, there's a range, but I really felt like we tried to give everyone true sleepers and dynasty values. So you got a 2-pack here again: Dwayne McBride and Malik Davis.
Yeah, and I was trying to. You brought up a good point about like the term like sleeper. So I was trying to come up with players that may not be on the radar of some dynasty managers, but once they discover these players, saying, "Hey, maybe I should pick that player up." I want to start with Malik Davis, with the Dallas Cowboys, and so obviously Zeke was released. Significant opportunity for Davis behind Tony Pollard, which I don't believe Tony Pollard is going to be used as a workhorse. I think he works best if you give him, I would say, anywhere from 15 to 17 touches a game. And so obviously that vacant spot for the number 2 running back in Dallas is open. So I like Davis quite a bit. One thing about Mike McCarthy, looking back at his usage, I know he became the Cowboys head coach in 2020. Like the number 2 running back in his team's offense has gotten a notable workload. I'm like on average, like the number 2 back is average, I think around 140 or so like rushing attempts per year. Getting a lot of carries there. And so I just think about Malik Davis's potential. I'm like, undrafted free agent from last year. I'm like, he showed out when given an opportunity. It's a guy that averaged, it's like 4.2 yards per rushing attempt, 2.1 yards after contact per attempt. And so he can gain yards efficiently and break tackles, which I like. Big play potential. I think as a rookie, I'm like, he had a number of explosive runs. Like over 10% of his rushing attempts went for more than 10 yards, really highlighting his ability to generate big plays on the ground. And I think he's someone that we could find in 2023 having potentially standalone flex value. I think the only thing that could really derail his fantasy relevancy is for some reason if Ezekiel Elliott does return to the Cowboys. I know he's still unsigned out there, but I really like Malik Davis's game, and he's someone that you can get very cheaply right now, and I would add him to your roster. So everyone knows about Dalvin Cook, in that situation. I like Dwayne McBride, quite a bit. I think he's an intriguing player to consider, like if you're in a startup, like late in drafts or someone to trade for in Dynasty. I think he could be more involved in this Vikings backfield. I know Alexander Madison, he signed like a 2-year deal back in March, so we'll see what happens beyond that 2-year window. But I think McBride, even though Madison will most likely be the starter, I look at McBride still being actively involved. Let's not forget about what he was able to do at UAB. Like he finished the regular season like as the nation's leading rusher. Also led the nation in rushing yards per game and yards per carry. Second in the nation in rushing touchdowns. All of his skills are they translate very well to the NFL. And so I think he's a great value to just take a late round flyer on or someone to trade for. So I know those are two guys that are kind of on my radar that you can kind of get under the radar, but say to acquire very cheaply. And they do have a clear path if dominoes fall a certain way to fantasy relevancy.
Brad, any thoughts on those guys?
I love the McBride one. That's one that Dave, you and I have been talking about for a while. You know, even before the Dalvin Cook move was made, we were harping on McBride, and I think, you know, we saw Alexander Madison have some value in season, even with Dalvin Cook there. We've never really seen Alexander Madison carry the load. And now, is that going to translate? Is he going to be able to carry it, or is the offense, are they going to do like a 70-30 split and maybe get McBride on the field a little bit early on to give him some opportunity? I think there's a very good ceiling, I feel like, well, I'll say floor, I guess, more likely, for McBride as early as this season, quite frankly. So.
Yeah, and don't forget about Ty Chandler as well if you're going to hedge your bets. He's quick. He had some pass catching ability, and so he's out there and he's like free. He might be on your waiver wire. So and Dwayne McBride, I was surprised. I've had 2 rookie drafts since the move from Dalvin Cook, and I thought McBride would go up the board a little bit higher. He's still very cheap, late third round in rookie Superflex rookie drafts, and so I like that. And just a nugget for him. He also goes by Debo, Debo. I got to interview him over at the NFL Combine, and I asked him about the lack of pass catching, and he said, I ran the ball 169 yards a game. We didn't really have to pass too much. So I thought that was a great answer. And so, Brad, let's talk about another rookie, Tank Bigsby.
Hey, yeah, look, Tank Bigsby, running back for the Jacksonville Jaguars, currently coming off the board as the RB 43 for Doug Peterson's offense. Have we forgotten what Doug Peterson historically does with the running back position? Whether we go and we look at Miles Sanders and Jordan Howard, whether we look at Josh Adams and Wendell Smallwood, whether we look at LeGarrette Blount and Jay Ajayi, there are always multiple running backs in Doug Peterson's system. Not to mention the fact that Travis Etienne has proven that, you know what, maybe 25 plus carries a game plus all the receiving work is a little too much for me to handle. Can you help me out a little bit? So what do? They go and get one of the best pure running backs in this draft, averaging over 5 yards a carry. You know, Eric talked about the percentage of 10-plus yard runs for Malik Davis and Debo McBride. Tank Bigsby had over 12% of his runs over 10 yards in college. This is a guy that can make explosive plays downfield between the tackles and allow Travis Etienne to be a little bit more that pass-catching savant that we had kind of hoped that he was coming out of Clemson. So I really like Tank Bigsby being RB43 again. I'm looking at just that jump in value. Can he be a back-end RB2? I believe that is the case, or could be the case this year.
Eric?
Yeah, no, I was smiling ear to ear, you know, hearing that breakdown of Bigsby, because I'm like, this is a player who I would say can get on the field immediately on early downs. Like we talked about Etienne's skill set as a receiver. And so I don't think Bigsby will ever become like a competent receiver. But in order to be an early down back, I think he has to improve like his pass protection. And he has a skill set to do so. He's not there yet, but I'm excited about the potential that he brings to the table. But I think he'll get, you know, snaps, you know, as a early down back, could end up scoring like some touchdowns. So I think they're a good combination if like thunder and lightning or something like that, you know, that kind of dynamic. So I like Bigsby quite a bit.
Yeah, you talk about a high value handcuff.
Oh, absolutely.
And so I got Kareem Hunt on here, and so everything you see about his analytics from last year says that you should not go after Kareem Hunt. He really fell off last year, and so it was a weird year for him. He had that little like 1 day holdout, then he realized like, okay, that's a bad idea, and so he went back. Then the first 2 weeks he had pretty good volume. He was getting the touches. He was looking like he was gonna be, another, RB3 back end or RB2, and then nothing. And so Brad and I are on here, and I'm like, guys, like they're gonna trade him. They're not using him. They're putting him in bubble wrap. He's only getting 5-6 touches a game. Nope, no trade. Nothing happened. He stayed on the team, and he really had one of his statistically worst years. I mean, his yards per carry was down. His elusive rating was down. Everything was down. But I do think Kareem Hunt and a few of these running backs are lurking and they're going to massively destroy someone's fantasy football value
Yes.
very soon. Miami backfield, Broncos backfield. I like Kareem Hunt going to Washington, pairing back up with Eric Bieniemy. I think that would be interesting. There is some, buzz about that possibility. I doubt Kansas City, but Andy Reid is familiar with them, so we'll see. But I do think Kareem Hunt will find a place to go, maybe the Cowboys. And so Kareem Hunt, I think, is someone that you can get fairly cheap right now and will have value very soon. So I would go get him now. Eric, any thoughts on Kareem Hunt?
Yeah, I think he's still, considering his age, he can still be a viable option in plenty of backfields in the NFL. I was just thinking off the top of my head, it's like he could be a very good goal line back, and in Los Angeles with the Rams. I talked about the Vikings. I'm like he could help them in Minnesota. The Giants. New York, or even like Denver. I don't. I'm not excited about that landing spot because I'm a huge Samaje Perine guy, but just given Javonte Williams coming back from that serious knee injury, like he could be useful there. So, like you said, he is going to derail the fantasy value in one backfield, but I believe he'll find a home sooner rather than later.
Yeah, I was worried about putting Jeff Wilson on this list. We've been reviewing Mike Clay's his projections and just talking about them on the show, and he's got Jeff Wilson as the top fantasy producer for the Dolphins currently, but his projections came out about a month ago, and they have Dalvin Cook very much lurking for an edit change.
Oh, yeah. He's got an update. I think he updated it like earlier. Well, I think maybe Friday or Saturday.
Cool.
But it's updated now. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, I'm going to check that out. And Brad, nice throwback names earlier. And it's a fun thing doing your dynasty leagues. Talk about some of like the history of your dynasty leagues, like pull up some trades or some like startup, like when the league was 5 years ago. I had to laugh at my buddy the other day. I said, hey, remember when you traded a first round pick for Fat Rob Kelly? He didn't really like that. So Eric, what are your thoughts here? I got my own personal photos here of Charlie Jones and Puka Nacua.
I was laughing. I was like, Rob Kelly. It's a name I haven't heard in a long time. A long time. Like I'm Obi-Wan here. Okay, let me get back to business here. You want me to talk about these wide receivers, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, all right. So Puka Nacua. I want to talk about him first. I'm excited about him. So we all know about the passing game in Los Angeles with the Rams. Focal point will be Cooper Kupp. But you look at the rest of the team's receiving core, it's very underwhelming, we'll say. So it creates an opportunity for some other players to step up. And you look at his draft position, I'm like, he fell in the draft. He was drafted in the 5th round. And some people are like, oh, he's a 5th round draft pick. But again, given the situation in Los Angeles, he could be fantasy relevant sooner rather than later. I'm like, this is a receiver who's even gotten comparisons to like Robert Woods, which are very similar, with their play style. And also, I'm like, you look at Nacua, I'm like, he could have a impact in the running game too. I'm like, he rushed for over 200 yards and 5 touchdowns last season, so he's versatile. And it's really just an opportunity there for a consistent role. And it's exciting, especially being in a Sean McVay offense. He's a very creative offensive mind. And so I think there's a path for where he could be fantasy relevant like sooner rather than later. So that's someone that I would recommend, picking up. And also, let's talk about Charlie Jones too. Man, like elite production at Purdue. I think he was overlooked in the pre-draft process, but this is a guy that was impressive during his one season at Purdue. Set the school record for receiving yards in a single season with 1,361 receiving yards. Only one of 3 Boilermakers in history to record 100 receptions in a single season. And so this level of production, it really showcases to me like this guy's ability as a receiver. I'm like, he had a solid performance at the combine. I felt like, he was a day 2, pick. I felt like he was a very nice value, where Cincinnati picked him up. And so with them drafting him that high, it really suggests that, hey, it's a team that values his skill set, his statistical body of work, and someone that they have plans for to utilize really in their offense. So you look at the stacked depth chart. I'm sure that's what some dynasty managers are looking at. I'm like, they got Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, they got Tyler Boyd. It is stacked. While it may be a challenge for Jones to earn playing time early on, I think it shows like their, I would say their commitment. I think that's probably the best word, really, to surround like Joe Burrow, like with offensive playmakers. But I'll kind of close on this, like a future opportunity. You got Higgins and you got Boyd. They're both free agents after this season. And I think it's very unlikely that the Bengals will sign both of those players. And so, again, this is an opportunity, for Charlie Jones to be able to step up. And he's really a low-cost player with huge potential, so I wouldn't overlook him.
Yeah, I got Charlie Jones at 407 and 412 in those 2 drafts I was talking about.
Great value.
I was like, all right, I'll take him. You guys gonna let me have him? So, Brad, you mentioned Eric mentioned earlier, Nacua had 5 rushing touchdowns, also had 5 receiving touchdowns. He's a good run blocker, tough runner. Any thoughts on Nacua?
Yeah, the opportunity is what jumps out at me, right? But like Eric talked about, Cooper Kupp is really about it there. Like, what else is there? And Cooper Kupp's almost 30 years old. So even if they add somebody next year, he could still find himself in a position to contribute as early as this year or next year. So I think at the shot in the, not necessarily shot in the dark, but those late dynasty rookie draft picks that you're making for Puka Nacua, that's what you're looking for, is who might see some opportunity. And this is quite high on the list of 3rd round draft picks right now.
Yeah. And I'll take Charlie Jones, and I just every time I get a chance, I'll stab the Iowa offense. I'll take a stab at them. They're just awful, and players really hurt their value. And so he escaped that Iowa offense that's putrid and went to Purdue and absolutely balled out. If this guy was at Purdue or Michigan State his whole career, he would have been talked about a lot higher in the pre-draft process.
Agreed. He overlooked.
Yeah. And so, and the day 2 draft capital is just, you can't just forget about it. So, we have to wait a year, but I'm fine with it. And I think he's definitely someone you should be stashing. Could be on your waiver wire, if not 4th round pick. One of my favorite guys to target in the 4th round. Brad, let's talk about Wan'Dale Robinson.
Yeah, you know how I am, Dave. I got to get a homer pick in there somewhere, whether it be a Cleveland Browns player or a former Kentucky Wildcat in Wan'Dale Robinson. Really the veteran, might I say, of the New York Giants receiving corps. They brought in Isaiah Hodgins halfway through the season. They brought in Paris Campbell this offseason. They drafted Jalen Hyatt. Wan'Dale Robinson is the guy. And look, he's coming off as wide receiver 61 in Dynasty ADP. Look, like, that is low. That's real low. Isaiah Hodgins, 1-year deal. Jalen Hyatt, is he the one-trick pony guy, or can he do some more other than just stretch the field? Paris Campbell, everything that we had hoped that he was coming out of Ohio State when he got drafted by Indianapolis and just couldn't get past the injury bug. We hope that happens. But let's be honest, outside of Darren Waller, there is nothing proven right now for these guys. So I'm going to take a shot at one of the more athletic guys out of the group, a guy that can get open, a guy that can play all over the field. They can move him around. They can do some cool stuff with him with a very intriguing offensive mind in Brian DeBall. So I really like Wan'Dale Robinson right now. And like I said, that wide receiver 61 is just a little too low for me. So I'm happy to call him a sleeper to finish above that right now.
Eric, thoughts on Wan'Dale?
Yeah, no, I was a huge fan of his game in college, transitioning to the NFL. So I would say the biggest thing is that there's a huge opportunity and void behind like Darren Waller. So no, but I do agree with Brad. He's someone to stash and really just see what happens, and really just to see who rises to the occasion. Like when you look at the Giants wide receiver core, because Daniel Jones is playing well. I'm like, he's an ascending talent. He got the big contract, and so they're going to lean on him in the passing game. I know they want Saquon back, but you're not going to pay a quarterback that amount of money and not really leverage him as a passer. So yeah, I would pick up Robinson if he's available.
Yeah, he had second-round draft capital by the regime, the new regime with Dable and Schoen. And then you have the fact that, last year he was playing really well until he got the ACL injury.
Yeah.
So, and you can get him for, late third right now in your rookie drafts. And so underperforming rookies are definitely cheaper during the rookie draft this year. And there's definitely a few guys to target. He's one of them. I was going to put Isaiah Hodgins on my list, but I didn't want to put too many Giants on this board as much as I am a Giants fan. And I think we may have hit all – I had to look back at it. We may have hit all of the different divisions here. But I think Hodgins is also someone you can stash. He's also going off as like wide receiver 58 or something like that. It's super cheap. But I put Khalil, Shakira, however you want to say it. This Buffalo depth chart, when we were looking at Mike Clay's projections, that was what stuck out to me was Stephon Diggs and then who's next? Yeah, Dalton Kincaid is an unproven rookie. I love Dalton Kincaid. That's probably, if I would have put a stamp, say that's my guy, that was my guy. But I'm also trying to be realistic as far as expectations for a rookie tight end. It's just, yeah, exactly. Shakira. And so, with him, I look at what he did in the postseason. When it counted most, they really turned to him. And he had 3 targets and 5 targets in the 2 postseason games. He came on strong at the end of the year last year for them. And he is the guy that benefits from no more. They brought in Cole Beasley. He's no longer there. No longer Isaiah McKenzie. No Jamison Crowder. And this was a good football player in college that, gets a second year with Josh Allen. I think he's someone that could really, really help your team this year unless they add DeAndre Hopkins. And that would obviously throw things for a mix. But Shakir, the way that he's the value that you're getting for him right now, I'm in. Eric, your thoughts on him?
Yeah, this is definitely someone to, just to kind of, throw a dart at. You just never know. It is a void, in that offense behind, Diggs. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. But like to your point, it's like DeAndre Hopkins is on the plane. It's gonna really devastate things. But hey, it's better to be proactive than reactive. So nothing's wrong with getting an edge or trying to.
I'll definitely be editing this episode and taking all that Shakir out. Just kidding. So let's go to tight ends before we get out of here. We got some good ones on here. So Irv Smith, we talked about him last week with Michael Florio and Jelani Woods. Eric, let's talk about him.
Yeah, the one thing about like Irv Smith, and it's like that could be a polarizing name for some dynasty managers out there, but let's not forget the promising rookie season where he kind of gave us glimpses and the impression that hey, he could develop into an elite tight end like in the future. And this is back in 2019. Inconsistent performance is like another narrative. He had a few tight end 1 games in 2020. His downfall has obviously been his health. I'm like, this is a tight end who played 16 games in his rookie season, that he missed the entire 2021 season and half of 2023 due to injuries. But you look at the Vikings' decision making. So they were concerned, obviously, about Smith's injury history. Brought in T.J. Hawkinson, let Smith walk. You are now a free agent. And so they obviously didn't have confidence in Smith's ability to stay healthy, but then he bounces back with the Cincinnati Bengals, Joe Burrow, in that offense. And so he was on the open market for a while. I was watching closely to see who is Irv Smith going to sign with. But I think the fact that Cincinnati, they said, hey, we're not selecting a tight end in the recent NFL draft, I think that bodes well for someone like Smith and his opportunity to contribute in 2023. And so one thing I've noticed, like his Dynasty ADP, it's been rising over the past couple of months, but he's still a great value. So if you end up adding Smith to your roster, you're really betting on health. But I just remember many years ago, like with Travis Kelce, I think the perception early on in his career was like he's injured, he can't stay healthy, and he kind of ended up getting things together, and we saw what happened with Kelce. So my point is not to say that, hey, Irv Smith is going to become the next Travis Kelce. It's just saying that, hey, he could still have a productive NFL career. He's still a young player, and I think he's in a great situation really to thrive. You know, we saw what Hayden Hurst, was able to do in this Bengals offense, catching passes from Joe Burrow. So I think Irv Smith can have some success too. So then I look at like Jelani Woods to kind of close the loop on tight end. It's some competition in the tight end room. They got a crowded room right now. You got Woods. He's competing against Kylan Granson and Mo Alley Cox. So I just think he still has a good chance to break out just due to his athleticism and potential. He split time as a rookie. He still had some success. I think he had a pair of tight end 1 games. So it kind of shows me that, hey, this is a player in Woods who can produce when given the opportunity. But then you look at the upside and the coaching change. I think we would all agree. He's an athletic freak. He was a converted quarterback. He dominated at the combine last year, with his measurables. And, you look at Indianapolis where they've got Shane Steichen coming in from Philadelphia. Expectations are through the roof on what he can bring to this team offensively. And we all saw how productive the tight ends were in Philadelphia. And so that's something I think that should have appealed, to a dynasty manager, because this is someone that has the athletic background. He's got the coaching staff around him, great playmakers surrounding him, and he's someone that could succeed. And he's also very versatile and really just being undervalued in drafts right now, especially in startup drafts. He's someone that I ended up on a startup a dynasty draft that I just completed that I added as I think like my tight end 3. And I ended up having T.J. Hawkinson as my tight end 1 and David Njoku as my tight end 2. I just want to make sure that I'm putting myself in the best possible position to find perhaps like the next Travis Kelce. I think Jelani Woods is one of those guys.
Yeah, you look at someone that has just unbelievable traits, and at the tight end position, we talk about it all the time. I listen to Move the Sticks, and tight end position is just so hard to project. It's very rare that these top tight ends actually end up being the top tight ends.
Exactly.
And so you look at someone like George Kittle. If you were to look at George Kittle's college resume, we wouldn't even talked about him. Again, Iowa, stinky offense. But he's someone that had the traits. And so Daniel Bellinger last year looked really good. He was someone that didn't really do much in college. So yeah, Jelani Woods is interesting, and then Irv Smith, he's someone that he was a very, very good prospect. He just hasn't been able to stay healthy.
No.
Brad, let's talk about Mr. Hayden Hurst.
I have a number: 1,987. That's how many air yards are available for the Carolina Panthers offense. That's a lot. I got another number: 50%. That's how many vacated targets the Carolina Panthers offense has. And then you bring in new head coach, Frank Reich. Well, what's his philosophy? Let's go back to 2019, 2020, and 2021, where he was a full-time head coach for the Indianapolis Colts. And how many targets did the tight end position get? Over 100 every single year. Every single year, Frank Reich's tight ends targeted over 100 times. And now you got Hayden Hurst, who showed that he is a very viable tight end for the Cincinnati Bengals last year. first-round draft capital as well, even though that was like a decade ago or whatever. It wasn't really a decade. It was like 6 years ago or whatever. But regardless, going into a situation where there are a ton of targets and a ton of air yards with a rookie quarterback who's going to want to just lean on that security blanket. I think he is a huge value coming off. Can you even guess what his ADP is at the tight end position in Dynasty right now? I didn't even know there were this many tight ends that could be drafted. 39. This guy is a tight end 39 in ADP. Come on, guys. Come on. We got to do better than this. So I think Hayden Hurst is a huge. He just meets the term sleeper this year. And I feel like I'm getting way too excited about Hayden Hurst right now, but it is what it is.
Listen, he would talk about Brock Purdy being that like steady Eddie plug and play guy. Like you could go with, Gerald Everett or Juwan Johnson and have like huge weeks and then really crappy weeks. Or you could have had Hayden Hurst just 9, 10, 9, 10. Like he just was chugging along all year. And like that's what you're looking for in these PPR leagues. Like maybe not going to win you the week, but he's definitely someone that, and hopefully he's not your starter, but if he is your starter, he can go in and give you double-digit points. But if you're going to fade the tight end, go 0 tight end, then maybe this is the guy that you can go with. So a guy that I wanted to put on here. First, Eric, any thoughts on Hayden Hurst?
No, I like Hayden Hurst because you look at you just look at that Panthers team in the division that they play in, in the NFC South. I'm like, they don't have really too many stout defenses in that division, and so he's going to have some pretty favorable matchups. So again, he's not going to be a guy that's going to win like a week for you, but I do believe that Hurst will have some productive games. And so I was talking about him when mentioning about how successful he was in Cincinnati. So I think that'll translate to this year as well. So I like him quite a bit.
Yeah, and so we talked earlier about the term sleeper, and that's the reason I did not put Chig on this list. I feel like for Dynasty standpoint, he would not be on this list. For redraft standpoint, when you draft Chig in your redraft home league, people are going to say who? And so he's someone, when you look at the metrics, like all of it, like yards per route run, his target, his route participation, his air yards, like everything screams that this guy is going to be a good tight end this year. And he's possibly the number 2 target in Tennessee. So I do want to give him some love. But as far as this, I felt like I had to go deeper. And so I went with Trey McBride. And so Trey McBride is someone that was a very good prospect coming out. He had 91 receptions, 1,125 yards in 12 games his last year at Colorado. He was their offense. 12.4 yards per reception. And as far as a grade, there's only 2 people since 2014, 2 tight ends that have had a plus 95 grade on PFF. It's Kyle Pitts and it's Trey McBride. And so as far as yards after the catch, he was 456 yards after the catch his senior year. The next guy after him was Brock Bowers at 406. Then you had 375. I can't remember who that was. And then it was 369 was Isaiah Likely. And so this guy is someone that can do a lot of damage after he gets the ball in his hands, which is really what you're looking for. When you look at these tight ends, a lot of them, like kind of your Jason Witten types, like they're great, but they don't do a lot of yards after the catch. They don't do a lot of deep stuff down the field. This guy can do all of those things that you're looking for. And he was a 2nd-round pick last year. You can get him for late 3rd, early 4th round. I mean, people they're like, he didn't do anything last year. Okay. Like Kyler Murray got hurt. Arizona was a dumpster fire. And like, what do you expect this guy to do? And so I'm going to buy the dip and say, okay, you gave a 2nd-round pick last year. I'm going to give you a 4th-round pick or a high 3rd or late 3rd. And I'll take Trey McBride and let him sit. I know Zach Ertz is still there. I don't know what Zach Ertz is going to be like after the ACL injury. I don't know if they're going to move on from him with the situation right there. They look like they're really looking toward 2024. And so I think he could be a big part of this team when you look at moving on from DeAndre Hopkins, a lot of vacated targets. a lot of vacated air yards. And, he's someone that this team did invest a high draft pick in that I think they could build with. Eric, any thoughts on Trey McBride?
Yeah, it's just an opportunity there. Who knows if Zach Ertz and how long he'll be out? It'll definitely be early in the season. So you've got McBride really set to operate as the Cardinals' tight end one. And to your point, I'm like, he's got second-round draft capital. He's only, 23 years old. I'm like, he's someone that's really just going to get a lot better and quickly. So, why not? Why not take a flyer on him? Like, it could end up panning out within a year or two, especially once they get the quarterback situation solidified in Arizona. Whether it's Kyler Murray or someone else, we'll see, but pick up Trey McBride. I like it.
All right. Well, Eric, I really appreciate your time and everything you shared with us. Anything else before we go?
Yeah, I would just say if you kind of hit on this earlier in the show is that, if you're not following me on Twitter, just stop what you're doing. Follow me at Eric N. Moody. Also pretty active on Instagram. I'm starting to get more involved on that platform. So pretty much anywhere on social media, you can find me at Eric N. Moody. As far as content, everything is at ESPN. So I cover the NFL, NBA, and WNBA from a fantasy and sports betting perspective. So if you like all those things, like a little bit of rock music talk and nostalgia, you'll be right at home. But no, thanks for the invite, gentlemen. Hey, it's been a pleasure and fun as always, and looking forward to the next one. So.
Hey, I appreciate that, JJ and Eric. Again, thank you so much. One of the kindest guys on Twitter. Sometimes when you see some of the bigger names out there, you're afraid to ask them a question. You're afraid to, comment on some of their posts. Don't do that with Eric. He's always extremely kind and extremely knowledgeable when he's answering. And I always appreciate that. And anytime I see one of your posts, I always see that you're being as interactive as everybody else. And I really appreciate about you. So that's it, everybody. Hope you enjoyed the show. As always, good luck this season.